They watched you in the beginning when you were still figuring out how to breathe through the weight of what you carried. They saw you when your voice trembled, when your eyes held both hope and exhaustion, when you tried to explain yourself to people who had already decided you weren't worth understanding. They observed the early version of you and assumed that was the final version. They measured your potential by your current circumstances. They judged your calling by your season of concealment. And because they could not see what God had placed inside of you, they treated you like you were ordinary, like you were replaceable, like you were easy to dismiss. But listen closely, chosen one, because there's a holy pattern happening right now. The very people who doubted you, the ones who betrayed you, the ones who smiled in your face but worked against you in secret, they are now being forced to witness something they never prepared for. They are watching you rise in a way that doesn't require you to announce it. They're watching doors open that they can't close. They're watching your peace become unshakable. They're watching you move with a quiet confidence that they cannot manipulate anymore. They are witnessing your silent rise, and it's silent on purpose, because what God is building in you is not the kind of thing that survives noise. Loud seasons are not for construction. Loud seasons are for performance. But what God is doing with you is not a performance. It's a foundation. It's an inner government. It's a spiritual authority that can't be handed to you by applause and can't be taken from you by criticism. This is the kind of rise that comes from being processed, refined, and trained in places where nobody claps, in places where nobody checks on you, in places where you have to learn how to hold yourself together with prayer when nobody understands the battle you're fighting. You didn't just survive betrayal, you were trained by it. And I know that's not the way you would have chosen it. I know if you could rewrite parts of your story, you would erase the moments when trust was broken, when loyalty was exposed as an illusion, when your kindness was repaid with coldness, when people you covered in love tried to cover you in lies. You would have chosen a cleaner path, a softer path, a more predictable path. But chosen ones are not built in predictable environments. The calling on your life requires a strength that cannot be taught by comfort alone. Betrayal trained your discernment. It trained you to stop forcing connections that God never authorized. It trained you to stop confusing familiarity with alignment. It trained you to stop calling everyone family just because you shared history, because history is not covenant, proximity is not loyalty, and words are not proof. Betrayal forced you to see what you were ignoring. It forced you to admit what you kept excusing. It forced you to pay attention to what your spirit was already picking up, even when your heart didn't want to believe it. Betrayal trained your self-respect. There were things you tolerated because you loved people, boundaries you didn't set because you didn't want to be misunderstood, red flags you painted white because you didn't want to lose anyone.
But God allowed the mask to fall, not to humiliate you, but to free you. Because the version of you that God is elevating cannot be addicted to being accepted. The version of you that God is lifting cannot be controlled by the fear of being left. If people could threaten you with abandonment and you would shrink, you were not ready for the weight of what God is putting in your hands. Betrayal trained your prayer life. There are prayers you only learned how to pray because of what they did. Nights you only learned how to surrender because you couldn't fix it. Levels of faith you only reached because your back was against the wall and you had no one else to lean on. Some of you discovered the voice of God in the most painful silence of your life. Some of you learned spiritual authority on your knees, not on a stage. And now when you speak, there's a different sound on it. It's not just words anymore, it's weight, it's wisdom, it's experience. So when you look back and wonder why God didn't stop it sooner, understand this: God didn't waste it, God used it. And here's the part people don't like to accept. Some betrayals are protection in disguise. Some exits are answers. Some endings are deliverance. Because if they had stayed, you would have stayed small, trying to keep them comfortable. If they had remained close, you would have kept negotiating your boundaries. If they kept access, they would have kept interfering with your obedience. But God had a future prepared that could not include certain people. Not because you were better than them, but because the assignment on your life requires a certain atmosphere. God will not elevate you and keep you surrounded by people committed to misunderstanding you. Now let's talk about the silence. Because your silence was not weakness, it was strategy, it was wisdom, it was self-control, it was spiritual maturity. There was a time when you would have defended yourself, explained, exposed what you knew, posted the truth just to clear your name, tried to gather evidence and convince the crowd you were not the villain they painted you to be. But something changed in you. You realized not every battle is yours to fight publicly. You realized some people don't want clarity, they want drama. Some people don't want truth, they want a story that makes them feel powerful. And when you stopped feeding that, the entire dynamic shifted. Silence is power because it forces God to speak for you. Silence is power because it reveals who is addicted to your reaction. Silence is power because it keeps you from leaking energy into people who are committed to misusing it. Your silence didn't mean you didn't have a response. It meant you had restraint. It meant you had growth. It meant you understood your destiny is too expensive to pay for with petty arguments. It meant you understood your peace is more valuable than being right in front of people who will never honor you anyway. And yes, chosen one, hear this without flinching. Some people only felt important when they could provoke you. Some people only felt in control when they could pull you into chaos. Some people only felt validated when they could make you look unstable. So when you became unbothered, when you became grounded, when you stopped reacting, they lost the version of you they could manage. And that is exactly when they started calling you cold or changed or arrogant. But you didn't become arrogant, you became protected.
You didn't become cold, you became clear. You didn't change for no reason, you evolved. Because the truth is, the old you was accessible to everyone. The new you is accessible to God's will. Some of you were never meant to argue your way into being respected. You were meant to rise into a life that makes the lies look foolish. You were meant to keep walking until the fruit speaks. Because when God vindicates, it's not loud, it's undeniable. It's not a debate, it's a reveal. It's not, let me tell you what happened. It's, look at what God did. And now we come to the rise, the part they are witnessing, the part they can't stop, the part they don't understand. Because your rise isn't coming from hustle alone. It's coming from alignment, from obedience, from divine timing. Divine timing is not delayed, it is precise. God does not bring you into visibility until your inner world can sustain it. God does not release you into rooms that will amplify you until you are healed enough to not bleed on the blessing. God does not elevate you until your character can carry the weight, because if you rise too soon, you become a target without armor, visible without wisdom, reaching for validation instead of purpose. So God hid you. God slowed you down. God made it feel like nothing was happening when everything was happening. God worked on your patience, your motives, your consistency, your discernment, your mouth, your appetite, your relationships, your ability to be alone without falling apart, your ability to wait without losing faith. And while you were in that hidden place, people got comfortable. They got comfortable thinking you would always be the one overlooked. They got comfortable thinking they could speak on your name and there would be no consequence. They got comfortable thinking you would never recover. They got comfortable thinking your life would always look like that season they saw. They got comfortable thinking you needed them. But this is where the shift happens, because the same God who allowed the training is now releasing the reward. The same God who let you be misunderstood is now letting you be recognized. The same God who let you be tested is now allowing you to be trusted with more. And what makes this rise different is that you're not rising with bitterness, you're rising with clarity. You're not rising to prove a point, you're rising because it's time. You're not rising to embarrass anyone, you're rising because you finally stopped shrinking for the comfort of people who never planned to celebrate you. And let me tell you something that might be hard to receive, but it's true. Some of the people who betrayed you are watching your growth in private. They won't say it out loud. They won't apologize. They won't admit they were wrong. Some of them will act like they always believed in you. Some of them will try to re-enter your life when they sense the blessing.
Some of them will send subtle messages. Some of them will suddenly become proud of you. Some of them will try to attach themselves to what God is doing now, but your spirit knows. And the reason God trained you through betrayal is so you would not mistake access for alignment again, so you would not confuse attention with support, so you would not let people return simply because they are curious about your next level. You're not bitter.
You're discerning. You're not angry. You're aware. You're not closed off. You're covered, because you have learned that everyone who claps is not for you. Everyone who compliments you is not safe. Everyone who wants proximity does not deserve access. And it's not your job to punish people. It's your job to protect the assignment. The reason your rise is silent is because God is building something that doesn't need to be explained. Your rise is silent because it's not fueled by revenge. It's fueled by purpose. Your rise is silent because when you finally understand who you are, you stop negotiating your worth with people who only valued you when you were useful to them. This is a season of quiet elevation, the kind where your habits change first, where your appetite changes, where you don't even crave the same conversations, where you stop forcing your way into rooms and God starts reserving rooms for you, where you stop trying to be seen and you start being chosen, where you don't have to announce what's happening because the evidence shows up on its own. Your peace is evidence. Your consistency is evidence. Your discipline is evidence. Your glow is evidence. Your restraint is evidence. Your new standards are evidence. Your closed doors are evidence too, because part of the rise is learning to say no without guilt. Part of the rise is learning that access to you is a privilege, not a right. Part of the rise is learning that you can forgive and still move forward without reopening what God closed. Forgiveness is not permission. Healing is not an invitation. Growth does not require reconnection. Your silence has been confusing people because they thought you would fight to be understood, beg to be included, chase them to clear your name, but you discovered something holy. When God is for you, you don't have to campaign for yourself. When God is guiding you, you don't have to argue your way into destiny. When God has assigned your life, the right doors recognize you, the right people find you, the right opportunities locate you. And that's why the ones who worked against you are unsettled right now, because they can feel it. They can sense the shift. They can see you slipping out of their reach. They can see you becoming unmovable. They can see you no longer needing their approval. They can see you thriving without the permission they thought you needed. They don't know what happened in the dark. They don't know how many times you cried and still got up, how many times you were tempted to quit and still chose faith, how many prayers you whispered when you had no strength left, how many times you had to encourage yourself because there was no one around you who could hold what you were carrying. They don't know how many times you had to rebuild your mind after being disappointed, how much you had to unlearn, how much you had to release. But God knows, and you know. And heaven recorded every moment you stayed pure when it would have been easy to become cruel. Every moment you stayed humble when it would have been easy to become proud. Every moment you stayed faithful when it would have been easy to become bitter. Every moment you stayed quiet when it would have been easy to react. Every moment you trusted God even when you couldn't trace Him. And now it's showing, not in noise, but in results. Your spirit clean, your hands open, your heart guarded, your standards higher, your eyes forward, your voice measured, your steps ordered. You're not rushing, you're not forcing, you're not begging, you're not proving, you're simply becoming. And becoming is dangerous to anyone who benefited from the version of you that didn't know who they were. So keep your peace, keep your focus, keep your prayer, keep your discipline. Keep your boundaries, keep your tenderness with God and your firmness with people. Keep your silence when it's holy. Keep speaking when it's assigned. Keep moving when it's time. Keep resting when God tells you to rest. Keep building when God tells you to build, because your rise does not need a speech, it needs consistency. Your elevation does not need a debate, it needs obedience. Your destiny does not need your defense, it needs your alignment. And as you continue, the ones who doubt it will have to adjust their opinion without ever getting an explanation. The ones who betrayed will have to live with what they lost without ever getting access again. The ones who worked against you will have to watch God work for you without being able to interfere. Not because you're trying to make them suffer, but because God is teaching you that your life is not a group project, it's an assignment. So breathe. You're not behind. You're right on time. You're not forgotten. You're being formed. You're not losing. You're being lifted. The silence was never absence. It was incubation. The betrayal was never the end. It was training. The waiting was never punishment. It was divine timing. And here is your confirmation, chosen one. You won't have to explain what God is doing in your life. You won't have to announce your vindication. You won't have to chase understanding from people who chose misunderstanding. Your life will speak for itself.